You've got the German Shepherd that looks like a Dutch Herder Mali cross. Can you explain that?
Is this a tough question?
Because I don't label myself. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, you're not gonna squeeze me into that nonsense of labels.
And I didn't really know how that would be received, to be honest, Alex. When I started going places, I didn't know if people would be combative towards me. And around that kind of time, I also did Ivan's podcast. So you could perceive that as the worst or the best time, because it's like I just spent like 3 hours arguing with Ivan about e-collars.
Hey, I wanna. Welcome everyone to the first episode of this show that doesn't have a name yet. We just agreed there is no good name for it yet. My name is Alex Lato, and we're gonna be chatting dog sports over here. Worth to mention, this is my first podcast as a host. So I don't expect to do an amazing job, but to save the show, I invited dog trainer and very experienced podcaster, Nick Benger. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And we're going to chat today your journey into the protection dog sports, right? I have like huge passion for it. And I strongly believe it should be more available for more people, which would require some changes how it's done. But before we will go there, you are well known in pet dog trainer industry, right? You've got your podcast, you've been dog trainer for how many years?
It's always, when do you start counting? I mean, I really started getting interested in dog training when I was like 15, 16 years old.
Okay. How old are you right now?
I'm
just trying to do the math.
I'm 30 now.
Okay, so quite a
lot younger than you.
Okay, yeah, that's the fact. I don't know who is Pikachu or something. That was anyway. So for anyone that doesn't know you, if you can introduce yourself, tell what you do, how you're doing, and this sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it makes sense to go back to the beginning. Like as I mentioned, being a teenager, for me, I got it's a classic story, like begged my parents for a dog for years and years and years. Finally, they relented. I got a Labrador puppy, and everything went wrong. He was chewing things up. It took me ages to toilet train him. But the biggest issues I had with him was, firstly, he kept running away from me. And there were a few incidents where he would run into the road. And then there was one really close call, and I went home and I was crying. I was like, oh my God, I was so upset because I thought he was going to get hit by a car. And then it was obvious at that point I needed to learn about dog training. So I just really absorbed anything I could. And at that time, Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, was at his height, he was super, super, super famous. So I just watched every episode of the dog whisperer. I was copying all of that stuff. And then I was most people say, I was a dog whisperer fan. I was a super fan, I was on his forums. I went to see him live. I had a t-shirt.
No way.
I was super, super into it. I as a teenager, he was my idol. And then you go online, and even then I was getting into arguments with people online when I was 16 years old, defending the dog whisperer. And people will constantly say, you need to read Karen Pryor's Don't Shoot the Dog.
All right.
And So I decided I would do that. I already had my mind made up. But I wanted to know what the other side of the argument was. So I did. I read that book, and then even a few chapters in, I was like, "Well, this is filling so many holes, and this is there's so much more to this dog training thing than I knew." Because I was surrounded as well. I kind of became quite surrounded by people that were also kind of old school, All
right.
And,
I didn't know about that, at all. Have you been training Cesar Millan before?
Well, only when I was young.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I look back now, to be honest, and for a long time after, even still now, I think a lot of people say this, but I regretted a lot of the stuff I did, alpha roll, do all the alpha rolling stuff. Also, I didn't really understand even what Cesar was getting at. I mean, if there is a lot of substance there. So even if you would have alert ears, I would think that was bad.
Oh, okay.
You know, like, because that is like calm, submissive, you know. And anyway, so like I did a lot of stuff that I wish I didn't do, and I felt really bad. And then I kind of like veered from that after the Karen Pryor stuff, just gradually got really into positive training. And then like trained him positively for the rest of his life, really. And I mean, he also had a dog aggression issues as well, so I kind of gradually like resolved that as well, and that was a whole other journey. But yeah, anyway, so I ended up going to university for canine behavior and training, and then after university, I mean, like a lot of people, I still didn't really feel like I was kind of obsessed, to be honest, with being the best dog trainer I could be, and even that's really a lie. Like at that point, I was like really like I want to be the best dog trainer in the world, you know.
Okay, so 15 years ago, it was like about 15, 16 years ago. Like, by the way, I was starting
as well
okay. at the same time.
Okay.
Funny enough, like our beginnings were totally different. But back then, have you just decided like that's gonna be my profession? Was that like normal job choice? Because when 15 years ago or 16 years ago, I decided like I'm gonna be a dog trainer. Like back then in Poland, like my parents were looking at me like I just told them like my best friend is a Bigfoot, right? It was like, what are you doing with your life? I finished university. I had like good job in big company, and so on and so on. And I quit all of that for dog training, for something what is not considered profession. At this time, like in the UK, was that like normal job, like choice?
No, it definitely wasn't a normal job choice. Like nowhere near what it's like now. But there were dog trainers out there. Like I knew of people that were doing it professionally, and I even met up with one of the local trainers and like went for a walk with him, and I was having a chat with him, and he said to me, he was like really honest of his own experience. Anyway, he was kind of like, "Look, if you want to make money, don't do this. You're going to be eating beans.
The same.
You're going to be eating beans on toast. Like this is like a terrible industry to make money in."
Just to squeeze in, the first day when I went to the dog training establishment, after 3 days, I decided that's going to be my job. Like this is what I'm going to be doing in my life. But on the first day, they told me you will never make $1 from it. You will never make a living. Maybe you will make some additional money, but you have to have like normal job, and dog training is going to be only addition. How life has changed, right?
Yeah, the industry's changed a lot for sure. I mean, not that there's a lot of people that are like killing it or anything.
But still, we kind of owe it to Caesar. Like you love him or hate him, but he put like dog training on the map. And, like nobody, like if you ask my parents about like whether they would ever use dog trainer, that would be like, no. And then the Caesar came in and then, okay, so the dogs can be trained and there is service like that. So
yeah, you're so right. And I think we don't really think about that a lot because all of those TV shows where they've had that format of the dog trainer comes to the house, gives you advice and leaves, or they have some kind of program, like that really has like almost created the industry because it wasn't not even just Caesar, because then you had Victoria Stilwell and now you've got Graham Hall. Like that format of shows, I think, has really put it into the consciousness that that's even a thing.
But still, there were like couple guys from, like for me, there were a couple guys from abroad. When I started at 2008, I believe so, the YouTube was for 3 years. So there was not much in the YouTube, right? Especially not much dog sports or protection dog sports, right? How did you get to the protection dog sports and when that happened?
Well, I guess I had a few experiences years ago with protection sports. Firstly, I spent some time over in Spain with Nando, and he was really, even though he wasn't competing at that time, he was very interested in it. So oftentimes we would end up watching the Leerburg DVDs and stuff like that. Right. He also had a Doberman that he'd done some stuff with. So he gave me, like, he gave me the sleeve and we had a little go. And I did everything wrong, by the way. I was like super tense and like, yeah, whatever.
When was it? Like how many years ago?
Oh man, I'm really terrible at stuff like that. I mean, probably almost 10 years.
Okay.
around 10 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, I became quite good friends with Corinne
Mm-hmm.
Rend, and obviously she breeds Malinois, and I think she really, even now when I speak, I guess it's less relevant now, but I don't know. I think she really wanted me to get into it, you know? And so
Right.
she was letting me do some heel work with her dog, and I was taking some bites on the sleeve. And I guess that's probably where the seed was like laid, but it actually took me quite a long time to go get a dog after that because I still have my Labrador that was elderly at this point. And I didn't really want to get a dog, like a really high energy dog while I still had him.
Mm-hmm.
So then when he did die, even then I waited 2 years. And then after that, I was kind of like, well, for my next dog, I want to get a dog that I can like do stuff with, you know?
Okay.
I wasn't even 100% sure I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted a dog I could do stuff with, you know?
Okay.
So then when I got her, I started trying stuff. So I tried Mondioring, I tried IGP, I tried scent detection. And the Mondio guys get annoyed with me now. Because I felt like when I did Mondioring, and maybe this was in my own head, because everyone was telling me the opposite. But I felt like even though so obviously I had an IGP line dog, and I wasn't really like, oh, I must get an IGP line dog. It was just, that was what ended up happening. And I just felt like, oh, I don't really want to like chase this for like years and years and years with an IGP line dog trying to do Mondioring. Even though they were all like, no, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem. So anyway, so then
I think whoever that was, like, huge respect to you. However, I think it's a huge problem. The genetic material of the dog really can decide whether you make it or not, or will decide like what sort of troubles or problems you will get, right? Like if you compare those two sports, IGP and Mondioring, you know, like Mondioring is all about having a passive dog towards the active environment. We want the dog to be much calmer, like save the energy, and because the performance is so challenging and so long, right? We don't necessarily want the dog to pull on the grip. Where in IGP is creating an active dog toward the passive environment, right? So the handler is very passive, the helper is quite passive. So, and the dog has to produce a lot of energy, but the performance is so much shorter. So for 15 minutes, the dog can, you know, run around like dressage horse and put like everything into performance and have the speed, have everything. Where in Mondioring we need to have something opposite, right? So we fundamentally train those two sports in totally different way from the start. I read some question, or when we were chatting, like there was some question like, can you do both sports? I think you cannot on the very high level, or maybe if you have like very talented dog, because they are so different in the nature that it would be, even with very talented dog, it's going to be a little bit hard, right? For example, my dog is from the ring line, and he never wanted to put energy and effort into obedience. That was like fucking blood and tears to make, to teach him animated heel work, right? Because back then I wanted to teach him animated heel work. But then would he do that like consistently for, I don't know, 20 minutes? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. Or we would struggle. Only with that, like this different genetic material, like the dog, he didn't want it to move like a dressage horse, right? He was very lazy and obedient, but putting a lot of effort into the bite work. So I think genetics are very, very important. Like one of the person that I train with and I'm coaching her, she has IGP line dog, and then she wanted to do Mondioring, and we had like a lot of problems. For example, the dog was taking a lot of drive and energy from aggression, which is not something what we want in Mondioring. Rather in Mondioring, we want like more prey dog. Of course, like different guys are training it differently, but at least the way you start, right? In IGP with the young Malinois, you can start with building aggression, building, that area. Where in Mondioring, it's all prey. If the dog doesn't have like good prey, then it's not going to be biting. So I think genetics are extremely, extremely important. So, at which point you decided you tried like all those sports, and at which point you decided like, okay, I'm going with IGP?
I think I started doing some IGP with helpers and stuff like that, and this is, at a young age, I felt like she was really, like you could see her excitement about doing the activity. She'd come out of the car and be like, oh, so excited, and like even when I will put her away, she just seemed so happy.
All right.
And then I think that was like, okay, I think I found her thing.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. But being pet dog trainer, you mentioned like I didn't know that you had like those first experiences so a long time ago, because we've been training for a couple of months. And you mentioned that you didn't choose the dog specifically for the sport. However, many pet dog trainers, they don't understand or they have like some opinions about protection dog sports. Like, my question always is, why did you choose protection dog sport, not scent work, not agility, not something? Because it's like choosing, for example, doing martial arts versus, I don't know, CrossFit, right? There is this element of, I don't want to, like, violence or fighting, right? So,
Okay.
and which, like, I really love martial arts, right? I was raised with the Bruce Lee movies, and that was like, on the first day when I saw protection dog training, it was like, that was it. This is what I want to do. However, it always interests me why people are choosing it over less, let's say, aggressive activities. Because like in pet dog training, back then it was like a little bit more of that like, why would you train the dog in aggression? Why, like people were telling me like, you train attack dogs or you train dog fighting, right? There was no kind of understanding, and we are teaching the dog something opposite what is commonly done in pet dog training. Pet dog training is all about stopping biting and barking and making the dog calmer, where IGP is all about teaching the dog to bark, and this sort of thing. So why protection dog sports, not scent work or agility?
I guess I was probably around the right people like early on, so I already understood that doing protection sports wasn't like,
All right, it wasn't surprising.
Yeah, it wasn't like some, like taboo activity. Like you compare it to like dog fighting and stuff like that. I never really had that illusion because I was around people that were able to like educate me better from the beginning.
Okay, did that influence you in any sort of way in your pet dog training style or work?
What do you mean?
So, because the way I started, it was like on the same day I started doing sport and pet dog training, right? So
Okay.
on the day one, I learned both, and I'm not gonna lie, dog sports, they kept me in the industry, right? I don't think I would be companion dog trainer if not the dog sports, right? And the requirement in the place where I was starting was, we're gonna teach you pet dog training, but you need to have a dog and you need to train this dog in at least 2 sports, and you can choose whatever you like, right? So like for me, it was competitive obedience and IGP. But that was requirement, which I think it was very, very good, because I think doing a sport is just, you have no fucking excuses. There is a rule book, there are points, and there is no, like with the pet dog training, it's very often like, oh, those people, they cannot do whatever like I'm telling them to do, or they are terrible handlers or whatever, right? Or the dog is this or that, or the dog, there is a lot of excuses, where in dog sports, there is no excuses. You have to make it, and you have like clear criteria where you are going for. So it's like very clear representation of your skills. And dog sports also are pushing to get better and never stop, because the knowledge is changing. Wherein feel like in pet industry, you can be terrible trainer and still get away with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's kind of part of the reason I fell in love with the sports stuff later on. But in the beginning, for me, the two things weren't necessarily tied. So, like, in the beginning, my goal was not anything to do with sports training. It was just I want to be the best pet dog trainer I could be. So it took me a really long time to kind of get into sports. But then when I got my most recent dog, knowing I wanted to do something more, you know, I wanted to get into some stuff just for fun, really. Once I kind of took that leap, then I realized everything you just said about how measurable it is, you know, in terms of your ability, and then also in terms of because of that competitive element that a lot of people don't like, but because there is that competitive element, it kind of forces people to constantly be trying to find ways to improve. Yeah. Which I agree, the pressure is not really there so much in the pet dog training world because you're always teaching people that don't have any knowledge.
Yes.
So it's like the same reason that social media, there's so many like people on there that actually don't know anything about dogs. Because
definitely.
It's just a confidence game.
Yeah.
You know?
So. Yeah. And, you know, like they're a little bit, you know, younger, handsome, more articulate, and then they will convince people they're amazing. And that was my kind of realization ages ago when I thought the dog training is becoming entertainment business. And at this time, I, you know, stopped being a purist. And at some point in my career, I realized that the most important is happy client, not the best trained dog. Because like in the end of the day, it's the person that wants to be happy with their dog. It's not me and my ego training a dog, right? Because there are a lot of guys that I know that they will be pushing people outside of their comfort zone because, let's say, if you won't put the collar on that dog will never come back, and they don't want to do it, etc., right? So, like, I'm at this stage that I will educate. Okay, if you want this and that, you have to. There are like different routes over there. This one will take very, very long. This one will be faster. Like you have like all the options, right? And you can decide for yourself. So, but going back to because right now you're a little bit more serious about the sport, are you?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think over the last however long, you know, since I've had my current dog, I've just got more and more interested in it.
Okay.
This is probably what happens to everyone,
but
really, isn't it?
You send me the fucking spreadsheet with all the champions, right? Nobody ever did that, right?
Oh, really? That's a little bit my personality, though, a bit as well. I tend to, and this maybe in the beginning when I was telling you about the pet dog training stuff, I got really, really addicted, and I was like, oh, I want to be the best of this. Like, this is like, I just obsess over things, and it's the same. Once I'm into the sports now, I'm like, yeah, thinking about it. And also, I think as part of the reason people like my podcast too is because I tend to ask questions about things that maybe other people. I don't know. I've always been the person that asks the awkward questions, you know?
Yeah.
Like even when I was at university, I would always ask the question that made the lecturer like be like, huh. You know? And it wasn't because I'm super knowledgeable or anything like that. It was just because I just really tried. I don't know. It's just the way my brain works. I really want to figure things out.
I'm not going to lie. Before we trained together, I didn't consume any dog training content on like no social media, etc. Like I don't follow many dog trainers, and I listen to your podcast, and I really like. That's why you're here, to save the fucking show, right? Because I think you're a very good podcaster. I listened to some of your interviews. You are still very, very nice, but you are asking uncomfortable questions. That's why I'm so hesitating to come on your podcast, mate.
I have had a few funny conversations after episodes that we've recorded. So, for example, I did a podcast on separation anxiety with a lady called Malena Di Martini, who is like become a friend, really. And I remember afterwards speaking to her, like long after we'd recorded our episode, and she was like, "Oh, but you disagree with me, don't you? You think like we should use crates for separation. I was like, or whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, no. And she was like, what do you mean? You gave me a really hard time over that. And I was like, no, I was just trying to like understand.
All right.
She thought that I was
Okay.
really against what she was saying, but it wasn't that at all. It was just like, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it, you know?
All right.
I think sometimes maybe it's a little bit of playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Like otherwise, then what is the point of the conversation,
Mhm.
right? And then it's like every idea should be challenged,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
So if you can defend your ideas or training concepts, then you're fine. But even if you agree with something, but you like some of your listeners, they will have those questions. And one of the questions that I'm hoping, like nobody listens to that shit yet, but I wanna like that thing is for people that are involved in the dog sports or they want to get involved in the especially protection dog sports like IGP. Have you had any difficulties? Because I'm not reading Facebook, but I've been told by some of the people that I'm coaching what is happening on Facebook. There is a lot of people that are asking like how to start the sport, and then they really struggle. So have you had any difficulties to start, or it was just like you went there and you started doing it?
No, I think the biggest problem that we have in this country is people being able to get into clubs, and I did experience that. I don't have that problem so much now, like in terms of, I feel like I have my little network of people that I can go to. But definitely in the beginning, before I was into IGP at all, I had sent emails to people and not had any response.
Oh, that's
like
very common.
multiple times, And also, I don't know, there's something about dog trainers. I think it seems like a huge amount of dog trainers are just very disorganized, So like, I always say that to people. If I try to refer people on to people, I say, if they don't get back to your message, it's not because they hate you or they're ignoring you. They probably just have missed it.
I'm guilty as anyone. And like people after years are telling me like you ignored like this and this person because they were messaging me about the training. It was including like fucking Olympian. I didn't reply to UK Olympian. So there was a time where I wasn't replying to messages, especially about the sport training. I think I had a little, how do we say that? I needed to step away from the sport because I had my reasons. And I didn't reply to anyone. And I think Alicia, that trains with me right now, she kind of changed everything because she was waiting for, I don't know, many months. It was funny thing because we've been going to one place. We were training Mondioring back then. And then she was coming over there and she was looking for obedience trainer. And apparently she messaged me like ages ago, months ago, and I didn't reply. But then I asked her to take the video of my dog and send it to me with her phone. And when she sent the videos, then I could see the like conversation before, and I was like, "Oh fuck, I need to reply right now." But then after that, like I'm getting better. I'm getting better at replying, and then it shouldn't be an issue right now.
Yeah, no, we've all been there, and I think what it comes down to ultimately, from my understanding of just talking to people and stuff, is basically just a lack of helpers. And because there aren't as many helpers, people can't you can't just let everyone in because there's just not enough time in the day, right?
Let's talk about that. You interviewed quite a few people. Why? Yeah. What do you think? Why we don't have like many helpers?
I think a lot of it is politics and people not wanting to offend people and stuff like that. In this country, especially, like take sides. I don't know. There just seems to be a little bit of a lack of organization. Oh man, you're gonna get me in so much trouble.
It's not the hardest question that the difficult questions I put aside, right? But
there seems to be, I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be the facilities in this country. There just doesn't seem to be. Everyone kind of complains about it, but no one tries to fix it.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree. right? That is the reason why I made my workshop, just so people can go and have a go at it, and they can try. And the structure of the workshop is, so whatever your training methods are, you are more than welcome. And I'm just talking about the sport because I really love the sport, and I think it should be available for more people, and maybe not so dedicated like most. Because like if you are in the club, you are kind of expected to be there all day, like regardless of the weather, like every weekend, because like this is needed if you wanna do well in the sport. However, I think there should be a place for people that they just want to have fun, and that could help like to grow the sport and put the good light on the sport. It's like with jiu-jitsu class. There are hardcore people that they train 2 times a day, 7 days a week, right? And they go and compete, etc. Right? And then you have like people in in different clubs doing training like 5 times a week, but still they want to go for competition. But then there was me, like I'm too old for competitions, right? I just want to go twice a week, have fun, and I don't want to compete. I want to like spend 2 hours a week on that activity, especially when I got older, which you pointed out. And I think like people that they want to do some IGP stuff, they should be able to do it in less, extreme way. Not everybody has to go on the competition. But if you have, let's say, border collie that likes to bite and you want to do IGP style things, you should be able to do that, right? And that's why we need more helpers.
The helper thing is weird to me though, but just coming from the pet training industry, because in anything else, if I want to go and, like, let's say, for example, I want to go become a scent training instructor, I'll be able to find 5 different courses that will take me from the beginning to the end of that and give me a qualification in the end, or anything else. But with the helper stuff, there's just nothing there. Like, and I say this, I actually, I've been interested in becoming a helper or learning how to do that. And I'm not the only one. I have friends that also are interested in becoming helpers. But it's like, well, where do you go? Like,
I think huge problem is that, is organization, of course, lack of dogs. But listen, if we had more people that are not such a hardcore fans, they would give their dogs, which could be talented, for younger in experience people to learn on them. When I was in Finland in school for helpers, there was like 100 dogs. And there were people that they don't necessarily, like there were people that they were going on the world championships, of course, but also there were people that they just like the social part of it. And they were happy, like, I've got a good dog, but I'm not going for the world championship, so you can, learn the moves on my dog. So you don't really, we didn't learn on only retired dogs that they barely moved. But growing the sport will also make it more available, I think will produce more helpers and solve that kind of issue, right? It's very much connected. Right?
You mentioned in Finland there's a school for helpers, and as far as I'm aware, that doesn't exist here. And it's like, even for me and the people I know, like, it's not even like we're willing to pay even to do a course or whatever it is, or to get the mentoring over a period of time. It just doesn't exist. I don't know why it doesn't exist.
So in Finland, there are 2 kind of organizations. Of course, there are some politics, and like, as when I was over there, they didn't like each other. As far I'm concerned, they still don't like each other. But so there are actually 2 schools for helpers, like in one country, and it's free. And because the sport is so available, right? And clubs are, I didn't have like such a hard time to get into the club. Of course, like many of them, they ignored me. I had like Rottweiler that barely could move. So all the German Shepherd clubs, they didn't reply to my emails, right? But then I got to the Rottweiler club. And in a small town, there were 3 fields, each one size of the football pitch, next to each other, and club in each one. In the town size of the Maidenhead, right? So it's a huge difference, right? So you have, and like we, whoever want to spend like all day because they were preparing for the competition. There was a group that was like hardcore training, right? But there were people that they were doubling, coming for 2 hours, doing their things and going home, having life. But then you go for a training camp for helpers, and you have 100 dogs, right? Because all of them, though, it's a cool event, and then they were showing up. So I think, like, I really wish that there was like more, because I think our sport is at risk of being banned. That's why we cannot stop exposure. Before YouTube, that could be, like hidden, like we don't do anything. But right now, the sport has a lot of exposure, so we cannot hide it anymore. But we should make it stronger, build like the numbers, if I could decide, right? And bring better light on it. So it's not aggression training, it's not like anything like that, right? And it's a huge difference between IGP as a sport and, backyard bite work trainers, right? So I think we are at this stage where we have to really put effort into clarifying that. But building the sport will benefit everyone. I think that, helper work or dog sport coach should be sort of profession, which people hate me for, like quite a lot, right? But I think it would benefit to everyone, because I want my helper, I don't want my dicker or helper to have like 9 to 5, right? If you are doing something only on Sunday, it's going to take you 20 years to get good at it. If you are doing something every day, you will get good at it like much faster, right? And then there is availability. If I want to train like 2-3 times a week because I want to go, on the big competition, I would like to, I'm happy to pay and have my helper available that maybe doesn't have like wife that is moaning like you are again, on the training field, and this is the stupid hobby and this sort of thing. Like if that would become a job, then, I think that would bring a lot of good into the sport.
Yeah, I can't understand why anyone would have an issue with that. It kind of is back to the beginning where we were talking about, is pet dog training a real job? And now it actually has become far more of a real job. I could totally see that. If people are willing to pay for it, then why is it a problem? It just seems like a real like crabs in a bucket mentality,
Yeah, there is the trend, especially in some countries or in some sports. Like I've seen that in Mondioring quite a lot, that it was kind of, we're not doing it for money. We do that because of it's my passion. So, some of the decoys that were refusing to take the money, which I can respect. But I also think, Ivan, Mia, Jany Bok, they cannot train whole world. We need more helpers or more people that they can coach like other people.
I think it's exactly what you said. Once there's money in it, people can dedicate more time to it. And also, I think it will grow more. Any industry, the more money an industry creates, the more it grows, right?
Yeah, it's some sort of stigma attached to the money, right? But let's say if you have a club and you want to go for world championships, right? And you have like group of people, you training with each other, and then you're doing for free, great. But if there is like George living across the road with German Shepherd that might have like too much energy and is looking for outlet, and he's not that dedicated, and he's willing to pay you, right, for 2 hours, he should be able to do that, right? And there shouldn't be any stigma attached to it. Oh, we went into the topic that I didn't expect to go to.
Well, it reminds me of like, you make the analogy to martial arts a lot, and you have a whole range there, don't you? You have like the kids' karate class, like that's being held in a primary school, and then you have like, like the Danaher like gym where it's probably like far more expensive, because the people that are going there, they legit want to compete at the highest levels.
But I think also they sell seminars. I don't know, like with Danaher, how it's done, if he's doing Sunday class for children or not. But let's say if they have like the squad that is competing and putting a lot of effort, great. But someone like me, I wanna pay you the fee, don't kill me, teach me shit, right? and I'm gonna pay you so you don't need like 9 to 5 to do so. Yeah, that should be available. Which, if we are comparing it to jiu-jitsu, like doing something like Craig Jones is doing right now, let's say $1 million for world champion.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think you need a very rich Saudi Arabian person that's interested.
I think they're there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised they're there. But that would be super cool. If there were like some stakes into the winning, maybe we would solve the problem with the judging. I think that would be super cool.
No,
if
it
we
would
have
definitely
like
be really cool.
competitions that because right now, when somebody people were asking me or family, what you get, like if you will win the competition, what you will get, right? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe bag of food and 6 people will clap, right? Like, that's it.
People are making money though, aren't they? I mean, usually it's the breeding that happens afterwards.
Oh yeah,
with the
breeding,
champions and stuff like that. So,
speaking about the breeding, you've got the German Shepherd that looks like a Dutch Herder Mali cross. Can you explain that?
Is this a tough question that you wanted to ask?
No. I had like harder questions. This one was the lightest one.
I was talking about choosing a breeder and stuff like that. For me, I'm really interested in dog health, genetic diversity, structure, all of that kind of stuff. Really started for me with years ago when I watched Jemima Harrison had this documentary called Pedigree Dogs Exposed, and that really kind of just like opened a can of worms for me, and I just went deeper and deeper into that hole of like being really interested in not just talking about German Shepherds, just talking about pedigree dogs as a whole and the issues that they kind of face. And I think this conversation does not really seem to be going on at all outside of like the minority, so it's still really, really niche. But I wanted to have, I don't know, that has always been an interest for me. And so when I was looking for breeders, I was really conscious of, I wanted to have a dog that had genetic diversity, that had a good structure, because I really don't like the way that the modern German Shepherds are going. I really, personally, honestly, when I look at photos and stuff like that, I love like German Shepherds from like 1920s. Like that to me, that's like my dream dog.
Can I ask a question? Like, I don't know anything about breeding, like nothing, and even less about German Shepherds, right? German Shepherd seems to me, I might be wrong, like we have like 2 separate breeds right now. Like there is a show line and there is a working line. And I feel that the working line is doing good. They're good and much healthier dogs than they used to be, and the show line is the show line, right? They even look different. It's like 2 different dogs at the moment, right? What do you mean working line or show line, a German Shepherd that
I
needs
think
some work on?
Obviously you're talking in like a broad spectrum, so you're going to have good examples and bad examples, so we're going to have to just talk about averages here. But I think pretty unanimously everyone can agree that the show line is just terrible. Both in structure and then the knock-on effect on health and all of that kind of stuff is terrible. But I think sometimes we pretend that the working line has no problems at all, and there are problems.
Okay.
So for example, you say they're like a different breed, and I think there are lots of really good examples of working line dogs, and maybe you could even say the majority are like much, much better than the show line, but there are working dogs that are really not far off the show line as well.
Okay. I wasn't aware of it. What I thought is the reality that it's much easier to find very good German Shepherd than, for example, Malinois, in terms of the health and the working side of it, right? Because right now I'm looking for Malinois puppy, and it's hard. And whoever I'm talking with, and I've met one of my teachers on FMBB in Italy. One of my teachers from Finland was over there, and we had the chat about, you know, like I said, like I'm looking for a dog, and he was like, oh, it's very hard to find a good Malinois at the moment. And I also talked with one vet that he said that Malinois as a breed is the most researched breed on the planet Earth because, in terms of health, because of the U.S. military. They just, you know, do all the research. And it used to be that, you know, some hip scores that were done like, because like, hey, let's do it because like we're gonna do it. But pretty much the results were known. Malinois was a very healthy dog. And right now we have to do it. There are a lot of problems, health problems, right? And then another, it's not, those are not my words. Those are the words that I, from the world championship level trainer that I have a lot of respect to. Like he said, like the Malinois is hard. Finding good Malinois is hard, and the breed is really suffering. And maybe they're like the last good Malinois are in Belgian ring, and this is what he said, right? Which makes a lot of sense. And he got German Shepherds, like for a change. And I see a lot of good German Shepherds, or at least the German Shepherds that I like. Do you disagree with it?
Well, I want to come back a little bit because it's not just the like superficial, like how the dog looks when it comes to. Let's just focus on German Shepherds. It's true of all breeds, really. It's also the inbreeding. The inbreeding in the working dog world is so incredibly normalized. Like,
all right,
no one wants to talk about that.
I wanna invite some hardcore breeder because I've got some questions. Like, okay. I want to understand.
It's not that you shouldn't talk to the breeders though, because it's like the emperor's new clothes. A lot of them don't want to admit this is. They pretend it's not a problem.
Okay, so what is your take? I asked like someone. I'm not going to pronounce the name, so I don't want to butcher his name.
Yeah.
Some guy from Belgium about just how he breeds, and he mentioned something about matching blood or line breeding, and I hear that quite frequently. Where I felt like in my university, we're talking about diversity. It's like the further the animals are, they producing the better offspring, at least with livestock, let's say. But like what is your take on this?
I think, I spent hours and hours on working dog because I just get hooked on this stuff like we were talking about earlier. I mean, how many dogs do you see is so common where they have 100, 200, 300 breedings and like which stack like this is normal. This is really unhealthy. There's in genetics there is like a thing called popular sire syndrome. If you use it an animal over and over and over again, you're reducing the population size over the whole population, and this is really not good. And I think we're going to face the consequences, and we probably already are facing some of the consequences now. You can't have a breed that you created in say 1900 and then at a certain point close the stud books. I mean, how long ago did that happen? Like a long time ago, like 100 years ago. And then say, okay, we're never going to let any other dogs in. So then at that point, everything is going to be your breed. At some point you run out of diversity and the dogs are actually really, really closely bred together anyway. And then here we are in 2024 and we're breeding dogs together that are like even closer together, It's really, really not, I don't think it's good. And you can only go so far. I mean, look at like a really good example of this is Dobermans, because very few people can kind of argue that it hasn't gone horribly wrong with Dobermans. And I think is the difference is the Dobermans are just further along. That's literally all it is.
Okay.
So in Dobermans, it's very common for them to be dying at like 5 or 6.
But is it not, like the Doberman is not anymore like working dog? There is, like, don't hate me for it. Like there is like small group of people that they train Dobermans, for example, for IGP, but it's not so commonly chosen breed like Malinois or German Shepherd, right? Is it not longevity or health one of the things you should take into consideration when breeding Dobermans or any sort of dog? Is it like totally not taken into account?
Yeah, I agree. I think they should be taken into account, but
is it not?
Probably not as much as people. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because if you're breeding a dog, you don't know how long that dog's going to live.
Oh yeah, but if you
So all you can do is look further back in the pedigree. But you're telling me that people, if they have a really good dog in the drives and in the sport, like that, I think in the sports world, all that matters is performance. Truthfully, people don't want to talk about that, but that's the highest priority. And then health is like, if you have a dog that has bad health, then obviously that is important. But it's the same thing as the show dog world. In the show dog world, the only thing that matters is the way the dog looks, and the health is still important. But if they have a dog that's really, really good at showing, they're more tempted to overlook the health. And I think you have the same thing in the working dog world. It's just instead of the way the dog looks, it's the way the dog performs, right? I mean, there are many.
I cannot stress out enough that I don't know anything about the breeding. I'm not the person that that should have opinions on it.
Yeah.
But if I was a breeder, like right now I'm looking for a puppy, and then I listened to Ivan's podcast. Again, I don't want to butcher name, but the guy, he has a dog. I think the dog is 9 or 10 and still competing. And like for me, this is something that like it's amazing. I want my dog to be have that longevity, working longevity. So it's not only if the dog, is retired at the age of 6. It's not, even though those first 6 years like were amazing, but it's much better if you can compete for longer time, especially since like how much work it comes to train the dog, and then you have like this small window that the dog can compete. So like for me, if I was a breeder or right now I'm looking for a puppy, longevity will be one of the things that I will,
I'm glad you're paying attention to that. I'm kind of conscious on this. I have a minority view. I just think I'm going to get proven right in 20 years.
All right.
I think it's the same thing as like if you were trying to train dogs with food in like the 70s, people would look at you like, what the fuck are you doing? But, now people are like, what, you don't use food at all in your training? Like who, and I think it's going to be the same thing with this whole subject. I think people think I'm a lunatic now, but I think in like 20, 30 years, people are going to realize that this is the case. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. Firstly, I didn't just come up with this myself. I read a lot of stuff by people that are really into dogs that are also geneticists. That's why I had Joanna Ilsko on my podcast, who's a Kennel Club geneticist. I really enjoyed reading Carol Bouquet's work. She's a geneticist, talks a lot about this. And then part of the reason I got the dog that I chose is because of what is happening over in the RSV 2000 in Germany, which is essentially ran by people that are way more conscious about this becoming a problem. Yeah, that's why I chose to get a dog from the RSV 2000, because I feel like they're really conscious.
Can you explain what is RSV 2000 in case some of the people that they are stepping just into the sport, they may not know that, or like I'm in Malinois more, so...
Yeah. RSV 2000 was started by a guy called Helmut Reiser, who was very famous in the sport and had a lot of issues with the SV in Germany, and decided to start his own kennel club, which is still part of the FCI, so it's great. You're still getting an FCI pedigree. So he started his own club called the RSV 2000, and they do a lot of things different to the norm, but one of the things they do different to the norm is they're a lot more conscious about genetic diversity. I'm not sure exactly what position he would hold, but I don't know if it'd be like chairperson or whatever they call it over there. Is a guy called Albert Sprue, who he's fantastic. He's given some really... I went to one of his seminars recently talking about the kind of issues that we're going to have if we don't pay attention to this. So over there, they make use of a system that actually exists in the FCI anyway, called the phenotyping system. And this actually exists everywhere. It's just that basically no one does it. So you can, and this is not a German Shepherd thing. You could do this with any breed, right?
Okay.
In pretty much any FCI country, you can take a dog to. There is a process essentially to say, hey, here's my dog. It doesn't have a pedigree. Let's say it's a Labrador, right? I have this dog that's clearly a Labrador, but it doesn't have a pedigree. So, what process do I need to go through to get this dog a pedigree? you know. So oftentimes it'd be like you have to get like you have to go to a show judge, and you have to do health tests or whatever. There's a process to do that that basically no one does, right? No one takes use of it. But in the RSV 2000, they are very proactive about making use of it. And the reason that they want to make use of it is because it's basically the only way in which you can introduce new genetic diversity into the closed system, which is like desperately needed in all breeds. Even if you think it's not needed right now, it's going to be needed.
Okay, so let's imagine I've got a dog that... the dog cannot have the pedigree, right?
That's right. Yeah, you can.
Okay, so let's say I'm taking KMPV dog, right? Really good dog that kind of looks like German Shepherd. Can I register that dog as a Malinois?
It depends when you say kind of looks like German Shepherd. Like it has to look enough like a German Shepherd or have enough of the traits that they're willing.
But I'm just curious.
It doesn't have to look perfect, though, if that's what you're saying.
Where is the line? Because, you know, if I'm looking at your dog, like at Onyx, like, I think I would bet like the fucking house on if we would ask like 100 people from the, you know, in the bloody clubs, right? IGP clubs. What breed is that dog? No one would, you know, categorize this dog as a German Shepherd. So I'm just curious, where is the line of, and when, where is becoming a little bit ridiculous, right? If I get, I don't know, Malinois cross Corgi, and I'm suddenly, oh, it's Malinois.
No, they wouldn't. They would not allow that in the phenotyping system. Like it has to look enough like a German Shepherd, but it doesn't have to look. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know. But it has to have enough of the traits that a judge is willing to pass that. But to your point, I think like when you, let's say that you go on to breed that dog, like oftentimes the way that those dogs look is not going to be like exactly like a German Shepherd in the first generation, but there are so many examples that in like genetics, in anytime anyone has bred dogs, the speed at which you regain type is like insane, you know? So like probably by the time you then get to the second generation, you're going to have a dog that just looks like you said, like no one is going to say it's not a German Shepherd, you know, like so, it's going to look so much like a German Shepherd that you're never going to be able to tell, you know? So I personally, I think that's the way.
I like that. I like the idea.
We should like this whole really strict idea of a German Shepherd has to look exactly like this, and the dogs look so similar is actually quite a modern idea. Like really, we would have. Really, what we should have is more flexibility, and we should have types of dogs. You know, like there are already examples of. You mentioned the KMPV. Sometimes you see some of the KMPV Malinois or German Shepherds or whatever, and you think, that doesn't really look like 100% like what we're used to. Like it kind of looks like a German Shepherd, but it's not like, you know, it doesn't look exactly like a German Shepherd. And I think that is something we're going to have to get used to.
Yeah, I think breeding for the look is not a great idea. I think, you know, like I said, I'm the last person that should have opinions. But if you look at Malinois and where the breeding has gone, even because of the sport, right? Let's say in IGP, the dog has to perform good on the training field, which is pretty much empty, and nobody, you know, like many people, they don't care how the dog is, you know, outside of the field. Let's say if the dog is living in the kennel and then taken on football pitch, right, size field, and this is the dog's world, right, it's going to be hard to, you know, check or establish what are the other qualities of the dog. Is the dog sociable? Is the dog, you know, what's the temperament? And so on and so on, right? So, but also, yeah.
Not everyone wants the same thing as well. Personally, I think that's okay. You know, if someone says, like, some people like their dog to exhibit certain traits and some people don't want those traits, you know, and some people want a different trait. Like if if you're really into the sport, you probably really want a dog that has a lot of possession. If you have a pet dog, that might not be the best thing because maybe.
But isn't that, you know, like I'm totally against pet dog Malinois, right? Like, let's not go there.
Mm-hmm. But even different working roles, right?
Yeah.
Like even the difference between what you want for a really good scent detection Malinois and what you want for a really good IGP Malinois, they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yes. However, if we are looking at protection dog sports, that used to be selection program, right? And you know, I think Mondioring is doing like much better job at this than IGP, even though like I'm hardcore fan of IGP, but I think IGP performance, you know, doesn't necessarily reflect if the dog is suitable, for example, for military or police work, right? We went a little bit like with the sport, like in different direction. So that is the only thing that if we are considering like IGP as a sport, as a, you know, if the dog is performing good in the sport, that's going to be good service dog, then, you know, it's not always the case.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
But I get the idea of this, of what you are saying, and I can kind of understand that, you know, your point of view that can bring a lot of good into the breeding. However, do you see a room that could get a little bit out of control, like that could go in the wrong direction? Because what is the how are we gonna test whether the breeding is going in the good direction? Because if, let's say, like I said, if I will start adding corgi to Malinois, that's not gonna end well, right? Because it's, you know, the offspring will be looking like kind of Malinois, so I should, you know, but I'm just thinking about like how it could go wrong.
You're gonna have to elaborate a little bit because, like, isn't that exactly what the sport's for? Isn't the sport what is? Are you talking more in like a temperament side of things? Isn't that what the sport does? Test the qualities of the temperament that you want.
What sport? Like, depends of the sport, right? Like if we you know, if you want the dog German Shepherd only perform good at IGP field, I don't think this is a good idea, because IGP doesn't, you know, ticks a lot of boxes, but I don't think it's checking like how the dog will, you know, do in the town center, right? And this sort of thing, like how the dog will do environmentally.
Yeah, I think like this is like, I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive. You can still select for the traits that you want in temperament, and even the traits that you like in appearance, and you can also still get
Do you
involved
think
in
it's
others.
done this way?
People are still paying attention to the temperament.
Yeah,
like the people that, firstly, there's like only a handful of people that are even doing this. Like it's like probably like less than 10.
Okay.
And everyone I know that does it is like obsessive.
Okay.
Like, yeah. So I don't think that is happening. A lot of times, sometimes when I talk to people about this, they act as if there is a parallel between like this and like breeding cockapoos. It's like, no, this is not the same thing. Like the people that are into this are like being very deliberate about trying to increase genetic diversity. Everyone I know that does it is involved in something. You know, search and rescue. They're involved in IGP. They're coming from a working dog background. So yeah, it's just like,
all right.
I think it gets a little bit straw man sometimes, where it's like, oh, this, you know, like trying to draw a parallel to like bad dog breeding or something. And it's like, no, if you want to, firstly, if you just want to make money in dog breeding, trying to get involved in genetic diversity is like, why would you do that? Like you would just go breed any old German Shepherd to any old German Shepherd, and probably you wouldn't even breed German Shepherds, right? You would go and breed the cockapoos, and you go and breed the like Bichon Frise.
Well, I don't think so. Like I think German Shepherd is quite desired breed. I think like if you want to be poor breeder, breed Malinois. Even then, they became very, very popular. However, and there is a lot of, you know, backyard breeders of the Malis, right?
Also,
which I never thought I'm gonna live to this day, where like normal people, normal George from here will want the Malinois, I will go to the car wash with my dog, and then they are like, "Oh, this is the Malinois." Where before nobody knew the breed, and guy in the car wash they wants to buy the dog from me.
Oh my god!
Right?
Yeah.
And what you gonna do with it? Right? Like,
Yeah.
keeping over there. So I think the popularity. Every breed suffers from popularity. All right, like I have not enough knowledge about breeding, as I mentioned before, to really challenge this idea or agree with this idea. Maybe one day I will talk with some breeders as well and look at the other side. I think with every good idea can go wrong, right? Like we didn't, every good idea can go wrong.
Yeah, I think this is what to me though. I think this is what happened with the idea of pedigree dogs. It originally came from this idea of like breed the best together and and purity and etc. And I think it's gone wrong. In terms of now we have like very little genetic diversity and we're only decreasing genetic diversity. With every generation.
Okay, so going away from the breeding and why your dog is looking like not the German Shepherd.
I know it's a good thing to talk about because I get asked by all.
Yeah, I know you are very passionate about that. I didn't, like I said, I don't have enough knowledge to really have opinions whether it's a good idea or not.
And I don't have an issue with working line German Shepherds.
All right.
That's probably going to be my next dog. Like, I'm not like, super, oh my God, you shouldn't be breeding working line German. Like, no, not every dog has to be part of an outcrossing project. I just think there should be outcrossing projects,
All right. So when you're getting another dog?
I don't know. Definitely in the next year, I think.
All right.
Because, I mean, we've discussed it at length, haven't we?
Are you like staying in the sport?
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. All right. If you could give 3 pieces of advice, how many pieces you want, or one advice to someone that wants to step into the sport?
That's difficult. I think, I honestly think it's like learning anything, and the biggest thing is to find a good mentor, And for me, that process was I went around and I worked with loads of different helpers, and then obviously I ended up working with you. So I'm obviously missing a. No, So I mean, for me, obviously, you've been helping me tremendously, and I think the best thing is to find someone that can guide you properly, because it's you have a hell of a lot to learn, and I still do as well, and. But it's definitely worth doing. Like in the time since I've been doing it, I feel like I've really accelerated my growth as a trainer, like much more than in previous years.
Because like IGP is known for using tools. Like a lot of clubs or a lot of trainers that are using tools or using aversive methods. And why did you choose IGP if you probably knew about that, like being positive trainers or being the trainer that doesn't want to use the tools?
That was really interesting because it touches on several subjects that kind of came together. So firstly, I kind of quite became disillusioned with the whole labels of the positive versus balance stuff. I don't know, probably about a year ago, I just felt like actually they're not really helping us, or they're doing.
Year ago. Okay, it just happened, right?
Yeah, maybe year and a half max.
Okay.
Yeah. I just felt like it was around the time, really, to be honest with you, of Michael Shikashio's podcast with Ivan.
Okay.
So that wasn't that long ago. Because I just felt like those labels are actually doing nothing but serving to divide us.
Yeah.
And they're not really... they actually take us away from the main conversation about what we're actually doing and the training, and I just really have found them really unhelpful. So I decided I didn't really want to be called a positive trainer.
Speaking of labels, I had this experience where it was soon after I published my book, and I've met someone that knew of me, and the first question, it was like, oh, so what are you? Because I don't label myself. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, you're not gonna squeeze me into that nonsense of labels. You know, I really think everybody is balanced, and that's it, right? To some degree, right? You can be somewhere on the spectrum, and I respect everyone and anyone, right? But it was like, so what are you? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, are you positive? Are you balanced? I cannot figure it out. You don't, put anything on social media, etc. And I'm like, that's a dick question, because all you want to do is put me in some category.
Exactly.
And answer to that question will probably make your own mind whether you want to continue conversation with me or not, right? Not like how you train, whatever, or what you're believing in, and this sort of thing. Is like, what are you in terms of the label? And then, so I can or accept everything what you are doing or discredit everything what you are doing just by answering that one question.
Yeah. But I definitely had a reputation, like people thought of me as a positive trainer, for sure. And I felt like, and I didn't really know how that would be received, to be honest, Alex. When I started going places, I didn't know if people would be combative towards me. And around that kind of time, I also did Ivan's podcast, which introduces, naturally, Ivan's listeners are going to be mostly balanced trainers, and they're going to be people in the protection sports. And then here I am turning up to protection sports workshops.
All right,
and,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Do you know what? Interestingly as well, I feel like this is like a compliment to Ivan's audience. Ivan's podcast is the only one I've done where people have been like, I've been to workshops and stuff, and people have been like, hey, you were on Ivan's podcast.
Of course.
I've never had that with any other, even...
That's why I let you into my group. Like, Alex, this guy knows Ivan. Like, fucking yes, okay.
Even when I did the television show, I didn't get that, funnily enough. So anyway, I think maybe people like had an idea about me from going there, but it was a surprise to me because I was expecting people to like spend, I don't know, like be a little bit combative towards me, or maybe like try to convince me or something. And honestly, like, super friendly. Everywhere I went, people were really, really friendly.
I think it's changing. It used to be like that. Like, I've met so many people that they didn't want to start the sport because they thought they will be told to put the prong on the dog, otherwise they cannot train at this place, right? For that simple reason, I don't do tools on my workshop, so people can come and then they see like you do whatever you like to do, right? Funny enough, like something what happened after some time, like because then I want to show the essence of the sport, not corrections. I don't think it's a good place to even start this conversation when I have only one day with the person, right? And again, this is the sport. It's not predation workshop. But anyway, it's come to the point that I was told that 90% of people that are coming to my workshops are balanced, and they're just leaving the tools in the car, and we are doing confidence games and this sort of things, and but what I don't want people to think that if you are stepping into the sport, you cannot absolutely do it without the tools. And there are like people that are quite successful, maybe not world champions. Like, there is no world champion, like, positive trainer as far I'm concerned. But to play the game, to enjoy the sport, you really can do it regardless what sort of camp you're from or what sort of methods you're using.
I think it's also becoming more and more normal, isn't it? There are like a lot more people now that choose not to use tools. I don't know, when I've been to...
I think I would...
whatever you
said
think,
like
whatever you think about
a
that.
lot of more people that choose not to use tools. I know. I think more positive trainers, they are playing the game.
Yeah, okay. I get what you're
so
saying.
It's like
That's... Like, no,
I don't think like people that they were using tools, they suddenly, I don't want to use tools anymore. I think just IGP or Mondioring or protection sports, they became much more popular recently, and more positive trainers or people that they don't want to use the tools are playing the game and they're stepping into the sport. And I think this is why it's a little bit easier, right? You have like amazing guys like Corinne.
Mm-hmm.
I love Corinne, and as far as I'm concerned, like she doesn't use tools. I don't know what is her label, but she's amazing person, amazing trainer.
Yeah.
And
But
so we have like those guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that though. You know, a lot of people that just don't have an audience that, yeah, as you said, they've probably come from like more of positive pet training world and they've come into the IGP. I agree with that for sure. I think there are a lot of people that choose not to use tools, but they probably wouldn't consider themselves to be positive trainers.
Yeah, I think because before it became fancy, because right now it's like kind of fancy to be a positive trainer and train with the balance trainers. Like ages ago, I was refused. Maybe I will leave that. I will leave that for another day. I will leave that for another day. Okay, going back to the original question, right? So you haven't been forced. Like you've been in the clubs. You've been along like different sort of types of trainers, I would assume. There was no resistance if it goes for your training methods, or you haven't been told to, you have to use the tools, or you cannot use the tools, like it can go other way, right?
No. And even, to be honest with you, no one's, at this point, I don't know, again, maybe it's just who I am, but no one's even like brought that subject up. But when I have seen people bring it up with other people, it's always been very respectful, and it's been like, do you want to do this? Like, we could do it this way. Do you want to do it this way?
Okay, that's very
and
nice.
then people,
you know,
some
like
people will
you're
say
Ivan's
they
friend,
do. Some people
right? Come
will
on,
say
man.
they don't.
Come on, man, you're Ivan's friend. Right?
What are you saying?
Nobody will be, arguing with you. You're friends of Ivan.
Well, Ivan, yeah.
That's very good, and I think a lot of people, they're quite shy because of like a lot of reasons, right? How to go to the club, whether the dog will be accepted, whether the dog will be good enough, and or will I be told to do something what I'm not comfortable with. I can, going to the martial arts, I can just imagine when I was going to, like the club that I don't know, it was like kind of a little bit stressful, right? You don't know, like maybe there will be some young, hungry guys that just want to kick your fucking ass, right, on that day. So I can imagine it can be challenging or stressful. This is why we have that show, to bring the good light on the sport and however you train and whatever you do, and make it more available for general public. Which is your favorite exercise and why is it heel work? But yeah, no, honestly, what do you like? What do you love the most about the sport? Maybe let's put it this way.
I mean, I really love the kind of dogs that we're working with, to be honest. I think that's why I got into the sport in the beginning, is because even as a pet dog trainer, the dogs I most enjoyed working with were dogs like that loved playing tug of war, that really gave you the kind of like, I don't know, they wanted to kind of do stuff. And for me, it was the dogs then the sport. You know what I mean? It wasn't the sport then the dogs. So like, that's the kind of dog I really like. And the sport is what they really like. So,
all right. Okay.
It in the sense that, and that's kind of was my mindset in the beginning as well, was like, if I'll do the sport that my dog really likes, I didn't want to force them to like do something that they hated.
All right, that makes sense. Because like we still get people that they think we are forcing our dogs to do the protection, right? Okay, so if it goes for your, like in IGP you have 3 parts. You have tracking, obedience, and protection. Which one is the favorite?
Well, at the moment when we're training, I most enjoy doing the protection training.
But I'm doing all the running, right?
I know, exactly. I feel like with the protection training is almost like you're the one doing at least 90% of the work, aren't you?
we are at the stage where this is the case. Later on, it's changing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's yeah, I don't know, but I do enjoy it though. I think regardless of that, I would enjoy
Yeah,
the most at this stage. But maybe when I get more advanced in the obedience, maybe that will change.
But I think I really believe that, right? Doing protection with your dog, especially if you are going into the guarding, because with the prey, I think is kind of like you are working together, but it's it's more the dog. But if you are opening the guarding phase, which we are doing with your dog, you and your dog, and I really cannot stress that enough, that always you and your dog, or handler and the dog, has to act like as a team. They have to fight together. So you are defending together, and this is like very like primal instinct that we created societies, we created packs or families, right? So we can stay safe and is like defending together. This is why we are building like such a great bonds. That's why like within the martial arts, because of the like that component of fight, I think this is why we have such a good, like very tight friendships or very tight relationships. And I think you cannot really replace that, like, or do it any other way, like with the dog. If the dog loves to guard, like this activity, and you are doing like that together, right? Like that, you will always often see me when I was training my dog. I was like literally hitting the helper or a decoy, and I could like really see the difference in my relationship with my dog. Before we were doing like only prey work, and when we started opening aggression and do the guarding phase, like the relationship has changed and it got much tighter. And I could see also like much higher levels of motivation and confidence in the dog.
You reminded me of something though when you were talking about the protection. I think one of the things I misunderstood when I was looking at this kind of training as a pet dog trainer is I didn't really have the language to understand the protection training, because the way that we're taught working with aggressive dogs, we think about the different motivations, and this is a totally different way of looking at like aggression versus in protection sports. Because as a pet dog trainer, we think about, okay, what is the motivation behind the dog doing this? And we actually use different language. It took me ages to adapt to this in the protection sports stuff. We think about, this dog is frustrated. We use terms like frustration reactive, and then we talk about fear reactive. And when I wasn't involved in doing any of this kind of stuff, when people would talk about defense, I would put that in the category of like fear reactive in my mind, and I didn't realize that that's very different. Like in the defense, it's not a case of like, before I was involved in this, I thought, so what you're getting the dog scared and then you're reinforcing them when they show aggression. And it's not fear, is it?
So there is some challenge over there. That is the subject for another 2-hour podcast, right? But there is a difference when you are opening that guarding phase or aggression, and there is a difference between making the dog sharp or confident. Because if you are a martial artist, you know how to fight, but you are confident. You don't feel like you have to use your skills in everyday scenarios, right? Actually, martial artists are usually the nicest people like you will ever meet, because they are very confident, right? And they don't see a threat anyway. But if you are opening that guarding and aggression and you push the dog like to really fight for life, or like to feel very insecure, right? Then you will create a sharp dog, which is not something what I want, right? I want the dog to feel very confident, and when we are stepping off the field, we are buddies again. So we fight when there's a fight, but when we are stepping off the field, I don't want the dog to feel like, oh my God, I have to murder this guy. And this is very often, like when I train dogs, and the guarding phase is my absolutely the favorite one, because this is the essence of, I think, IGP as a sport, right? Like for myself, because we want that natural guarding behavior where the tendency goes two ways, right? Guarding behavior, we want that natural guarding behavior, and the dog being confident over there in that like sort of settings or with those feelings. Where what I see around, we go in different ways. So like there will be trainers that they want to do the fashion, and then there is like woof woof, give me a ball, which like train however you like, but this is not how I would like to train my dog. If we are, and I don't know if it's coming from, where is it coming from, or lack of understanding, or like if your dog is guarding like next to the window or to the gate, right? You don't need to reward the dog with the cookie or with the ball, right? It's like rewarding for the dog behavior, right? And the dog feels powerful, and there is no need for any other reinforcement over here, because this activity is reinforcing, right? So some of the people that are doing like only prey, which I think takes away from what the sport is, right? So there is woof woof for the bow, and this is not how I would like to train my dog. But there are like other spectrum where we are making, like they're making the dogs just sharp, right? So the dog is coming and literally having emotional meltdown because it's not feeling insecure and uses aggression because there is nothing else to do, right? So both of those extremes, I think this is not what I would like to have with my dog. And we're talking about the helper work, and maybe this is a good time to actually mention it. I've been doing helper work, or I started 15 years ago. It was like 2008-ish, right? Or 2009. And in 2019, my world fell apart. Right? There was one trainer from Helper that came for a seminar over here, and he took my word, shook it, and threw it into the bin. Right? And I was like, I was very confident in my skills before. Don't get me wrong. Like you would talk to me like I was very confident in my skills because of the school for helpers, etc. But he kind of explained me the difference between the sharpness and confidence and quite a lot of other things, which kind of made total sense. Where, for example, before I had like some challenges in the training with some dogs, or challenges with the training my dog, and after that I was going for every single seminar of his, and then I was sharpening my skills, and that came like new obsession of mine, right? But yeah, so I think if it's done correctly, you can build amazing relationship with the dog. But this is the thing, that the dog shouldn't be coming sharp off the field, should come like more balanced actually, and more confident. Actually, aggression training or doing the proper guarding made my dog more balanced and more safe, and only that, right? And with all of the dogs, then we do the indoor training in the tent, right? When the dog is not getting any sort of toy or anything, cookie for the guarding. But when we are leaving field, everybody, like every new person that trains with me, expects the dog to be like fucking mental and trying to murder me, where the whole idea and the whole point is you leave the field and the dog is like, okay, we had good time, but it's done.
And that's always been my experience. My dog's always just trying to get your attention once we've done, and cuddling up to you and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I totally agree with that. But I think when I was a pet dog trainer, I misunderstood what that whole thing was. And I'm coming into the sports, I was like, oh, I never want to work my dog in defense. I just want to work them in prey, because I had this idea that defense was like scaring the dog and like was going to be this really unethical thing. And actually, it's almost more like a game that you play that elicits the guarding instincts.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because in pet dog training at the moment, it's really trendy to give the dogs outlets for those desires
Yeah.
and those drives that they have. You know, with the spaniels, you're giving them hunting games and stuff. But guarding breeds, they're bred to guard, right?
Oh, and they love it.
Yeah, they
right?
love
and
it.
Then if you're taking away that from them, they may not be necessarily happy. But like I mentioned that to you before, that when I was raising my dog, we had very clear deal. You can bark and bite on the training field. I don't want to have single bark in the house. And for a long time, you could break into my house, take the dog for a walk, right? And then he wouldn't do anything. Even though in the training, like he was like biting a person, and it wasn't about the sleeve or a suit. Like I train this way, so I give the dog experience too. So the dog thinks like I'm biting a person, right? So, but bringing that clarity into his life, this is the place and the time to do that. Allowed me to have Malinois in the house that wouldn't bark, it's a safe dog. You can come and, like, I don't really have to lock him away because I've got visitors. So, but again, there is a lot of, even IGP enthusiasts that they will disagree with working the dog in aggression or working the dog in guarding, and they want to keep everything in prey. So
it's how it's done, isn't it? It's like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I listen because I feel like I'm old school. I'm old right now, right? So I prefer this old way. And in school for helpers in Finland, that was like week long, where you had like physical tests, theoretical tests. Then you've been working the dogs all day, and you've been judged by every single move. Like you had to it wasn't about being perfect. It's about like, can you recognize what did you do wrong, or has every move been planned or had a purpose, right? So, and then they were looking for, so you can open those drives in the good way, right? You train how you want to train, but you need to have a skill, for example, to channel the dog between drives. But like I said, like this is the subject on another long podcast. But I would say for anyone that is stepping into the sport and have any sort of questions about the protection work, or they're not sure, ask your helper about every single move. And they should be able to justify and tell you and explain every single move. That's why after each and every protection session, I'm explaining what I'm doing. Cool, man. Like that was super cool. Any final words for, like, to finish up the very first episode of the show that doesn't have a name yet? Maybe I will ask anyone who listens, right? Give me the name of the show. But any final words you would like to say to the world?
I think I would just encourage people to get involved in sports, even if you aren't interested in IGP. I really think people should do something, especially as pet dog trainers. I feel like for me, I really kick myself that I didn't get involved in dog sports earlier, because I think I would be so much better now.
Yeah. I don't wanna shit on anyone, but I respect dog trainers that are doing sports more than those that are doing pet dog things. Don't hate me for it. I think it's just pushing you to get results and to develop skills. And like after one of my workshops, there was the girl that she wants to get into dog training. And even though that was IGP workshop, like I was talking about aggression, which is totally opposite what the pet dog trainers want to hear, right? So about opening aggression rather than, suppressing it. And she asked me, where do I go? How do I develop my skills, etc., right? And the best advice I could give her is get into the sport. Get into the sport, because the sport is unforgiving. right? You need to push yourself and develop skills and train, etc., etc., right? And if you will get into protection dog sports, all the spectrum of the dog's drives will be clearer for you. Because if you, let's say, if you do competitive obedience, you will be much better at training behaviors, no questions about that, right? But if you go in IGP, which involves all the area, right? Prey, aggression, control, and nose work, I think this is the sport that offered the most, right? So you will be better at all of the areas.
We live in a world right now where everyone is complaining about the same thing, really, when it comes to education for dog trainers, which is like, you know, all of these courses give you so much theory, but there's like barely any practical. And you hear that pretty much unanimously across the board. It's not one organization or another. It's like pretty much everyone complains about all of the courses having the same issue. Mm-hmm. There is no shortage of ability to go and learn the theory, and you absolutely should do that. But for me, the dog sport actually fills the practical hole that we have in this industry, where it will build the practical skills that you need to be a very good dog trainer. So I think if I could go back, I would have started as early as possible. And I don't even, for me, it's like sometimes when I had my previous dog, I would like talk myself out of it because I would be like, well, I can't do IGP because I have a Labrador. But what I should have done is I should have gone into gun dog training, or I should have gone and really gone into scent detection. You know, I should have just been doing something.
Or the IGP with the Labrador. Like you mentioned, like he loved to bite. Why not? I really enjoy that. Like somebody, you know, commented recently that, oh, you're like pet dog helper, right? Because I really enjoy training those off-breeds, right? I really like border collies that they're biting, and, you know, and bringing that consistent results. Like all the collies that, you know, I'm training for the bite work, they are not bred for it. Those are agility dogs that previously hasn't been playing well, right? And then, like if you work smart and long enough, you can take those threads, and those dog loves the job, right? So I really enjoy that, and I think it should, you know, having off-breed shouldn't stop you of trying or enjoying at your own level. Cool.
Sweet.
Nick, you're the man. Thank you very much for coming all the way to my new setup.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And yeah, talk to you next time. Take care.